not with us tonight, off at a basketball game somewhere, but you're not stuck with just me. I have a special guest host and a very special guest. So stick around through the countdown and let's have some fun. Well, hi guys, and welcome to actually what is the inaugural episode of TPS Report after the branding, the Politek Show. We're now the TPS Report. I explained it Saturday. Some of y'all saw it. The rest of you will figure it out. Here by myself tonight. Dani, of course, up with the basketball players somewhere up north. Not entirely sure where. So I have with me tonight couple of guests. First of all, guest host, you know him as the grumpy conservative ogre from the Brushfire Mind.
Right.
What's going on, brother? Chris Lowry is here. How you doing, sir?
You know, it's so hard for me not to begin my intro with good morning because, well, that's when we do what we do.
That's when you do the show. Yeah, you're up late for us.
Oh yeah, y'all got me up past bedtime.
We do.
But I am in like Flint for this one, baby.
We also have a man who is an absolute legend among the meme war crowd and standing out in his own right on social media. We have Jared Schmeck in the house. Jared, how you doing, brother? Thank you so much for being here.
Good. How are you doing, man? I appreciate you having me on.
Listen, our pleasure. It really is. And when Danielle wasn't going to be here, first person I thought of was Chris because, I mean, honestly, there's no, in my opinion, bigger voice for the conservative movement than Chris at the Brushfire Mind. There's a link in the description for anybody that wants to find the Brushfire Mind, by the way. But yeah, we're absolutely thrilled to have you here. And some people, listen, very few, but some people are going to ask the question, well, who is Jared Schmeck? So let me roll a video real quick to remind people, and then we'll dive into this show.
I hope you have a wonderful Christmas.
Well, yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful Christmas as well. Merry Christmas, and Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon. I agree. Hey, by the way, where are you in Oregon?
Bye-bye.
That was at Christmas time.
And not only did you get the former vice president to troll himself, you hung up on the son of a bitch.
Yes.
They actually hung up on me.
Did they really?
Did they?
Yeah. As soon as I said,
Of
let's
course
go,
they
Brandon,
did.
it clicked.
Of
Yeah, so there was some
course.
silence there. And I didn't hear him reply. I didn't know he agreed with me. Because they hung up
That's
before
new
he could say
information,
anything.
actually.
Yeah.
That is that. Of course, they hung up on you. That's amazing. So let me ask you. We'll talk about the call because obviously it happened. People are interested, but it's not going to be the focus of tonight's show. How is it you happen to be on the phone with the former vice president and his wife there?
Yeah, so NORAD takes phone calls every Christmas Eve to tell kids and families when Santa Claus is coming to their area. And my sons are actually the ones who told me about this. And so for the last couple of years, my two boys and I have been calling. And so that's all we were doing this year. I didn't know that anyone took phone calls aside from volunteers at the Air Force Base in Colorado. I believe it's a Space Force base now. And so that's really all it was. And so we called the number. The volunteer told us that Jill Biden was taking phone calls and asked if we wanted to speak to her. And so I figured, sure, why not?
Sure, why not?
We'll see what happens. Yeah.
Oh,
And
excuse me, I think I believe you meant Dr. Jill Biden.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
That's
So so they put us on hold, and I'm thinking it maybe is going to be like an automated Christmas message or something, but we're on hold for about 10 minutes, and I'm like, yeah, maybe this is going to be an actual phone call, and I doubt she's by herself. Maybe Joe will be there, but I'm not sure. Thinking probably not, but maybe. And so I had my son grab his iPad and film it, which was that's what we were filming for ourselves. So I didn't know this was live streamed or anything like that. So I had him filming it thinking, hey, this will be a funny memory. If Joe's on the phone, I mean, technically I don't get to talk to a real president, but maybe I'll get a chance to tell him how I feel. And
yeah.
So I have to. So 15 minutes in, they pick up the phone, and Joe is actually the one to speak first. And I was really surprised because I couldn't believe that they would actually allow him to carry on an unscripted conversation with someone.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I was cordial during the phone call. I don't think there's any reason not to at least be respectful and cordial. And that's just part of my character and who I am. But during this call, I am trying to navigate it and figure out what I want to say because I want to tell him how I feel. And about halfway into the call, Let's Go Brandon popped into my head because I felt like it was just the perfect. I mean, we all know how it began, that wonderful day on the race car track. And it's grown so much since then. It's really become a movement, and it encompasses all the frustrations that we have, not only with Joe Biden and his administration,
Right.
but the leftist mob, the mainstream media, the cancel culture, the attack on our families and our freedoms, and the attacks on God. And so it encompasses all of those frustrations. And it turns out it's really easy to sneak into a phone call, which was it was a delayed call. So whoever was monitoring it dropped the ball. But,
I'll say.
Yeah. So
they
I
ever.
dropped it right at the end there, and they hung up. It was about 10 minutes later that we saw it on a Breitbart post on Instagram. That's when I realized, oh, this was live streamed, and
Ooh.
he agreed, and this is probably going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. We'll talk about that. The what a big deal it turned into in a second. In the meantime, let's say hi to folks who are tuning in and watching. Just for From Radio is here. We're currently broadcasting over on Just for From Radio. Janine is with us. Hey, Janine. Danielle is in the chat. Danielle's my co-host, regular co-host for the TPS report. She's what is it, modding, wielding the band hammer over on YouTube at the moment. Canadian Bacon's here. Becky Myers, what's up, Becky? Jake Kukin is with us. Richard Bradshaw is here. Hans is with us. Cameron Anderson, the number 2 of the Brushfire Mind, he's over there on YouTube. Jeff Halshausen is with us. Patrick Brown is here. Steve Rodemeyer, number 3 of the Brushfire Mind, over there on YouTube.
Steve Rodemeyer is currently on loan to TPS as a comments moderator.
Okay, excellent. Let's see. Gayla is here. She's down in Mexico checking us out. Hey, Gayla. Stay safe down there, by the way. Bill Campbell's here. Hey, Bill. Semper Fi, buddy. Tracy Merchant is with us. Hey, Tracy. Michelle Ivy's here. Hi, Michelle. Patrick Brown, number 4 of the Brushfire Mind crew. Hey, Patrick. Sabrina. Hey, Sabrina. Let me see. Richard Bradshaw. I think Mitch McCarty's here. Hey, Mitch. Good to see you, brother. Thank you for being here. Joy is with us. Hi, Joy. I don't want to miss anybody, and I'm sure I have. So same rules apply. Yell at me in the chat if I didn't mention your name. Larry Cox is here. Terry Larry's here. Hey, Terry. David Foster, the original live streaming pro. He's here. And I think that's everyone. Same rules apply, folks. If you have a question for Jared in the chat, please put a Q and a colon in front of it. Then towards the end of the show, I'll be able to filter your questions, and there's a much better chance that they will be asked.
And before we move on, you said hello to Terry Lowry. That's my mother, and if she's watching, that means that His Majesty Sergeant Major Lowry, Daddy is also
means
watching.
The Sergeant Major's watching.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
And also, Ma, thanks for dinner. That was Ma made a corned beef brisket for dinner tonight, and it was basically beef flavored butter. It was just witchcraft on a plate.
All right. Well, I didn't get any of that, so I'll be expecting some delivered to me tomorrow. So let's
Oh no.
Oh, Chris ate all that.
It's gone.
Yeah. What Chris means is he ate all that. So let's pick up here. The phone call was made. You saw on you said Breitbart, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And then we all know what the response is going to be to that. So tell us we talk about it here often. The response of the media to things that don't meet their ideological standards. Social media, same reason. What did you experience, and how quick was the reaction to this, Jared?
Within a few hours, I would say, for sure within 6 hours, we were receiving phone calls, which started off as just prank phone calls and like insults and whatnot. And that's all it was on Friday. It was a lot of them, but nothing too crass. And Christmas morning during breakfast, the Oregonian called me, which that's a local, it's a Portland-based, very liberal newspaper. And frankly, it felt like a hit job. This is, you see this stuff every single day. When you're actually in it, it's a little bit different. And it's easy to get tunnel vision. And so they asked me if I wanted to talk to them. I started to, and then into this conversation, I'm like, they're already spinning this. I don't want to talk anymore, and I don't really want my name out there. I didn't even have social media at the time. My wife did, but I didn't. And they said my name was going to be published, and so I decided to talk to them. Well, sure enough, they did take what I said and out of context and essentially made me sound weak and apologetic, which is what I should expect from the Oregonian. So I want to make it clear to everyone that's here, I'm not apologizing for anything. If anyone should be apologizing for anything, it's Joe Biden and everyone that's a part of what's going on in our country. And so at that point, we were receiving calls from larger organizations. ABC wanted to take the rights to our YouTube video. Fox had done a report on me stating that I yelled at Joe Biden. I didn't ever yell at him. Um, and that's actually why we posted the video to YouTube. Once I saw that headline, but it wasn't anything. I don't know. It's just what I expected. But that night, Christmas night, is when things got nasty, and people started posting my address online, my phone number online. My phone was ringing off the hook. My wife's phone was ringing off the hook. Her parents, my parents, cousins, grandparents, uncle. I mean, people all over the country that are part of our family were getting phone calls, and I was receiving death threats and threats on the life of my wife and all 4 of my children, and using their names and everything. And that's where I respect our First Amendment. Don't threaten to kill my kids.
Well, here's the thing. Threats aren't protected under the First Amendment, period.
No, they're not. They're not. And but you know what? If they want to threaten me, okay, that's fine. I don't care. But it was pretty much nonstop. As soon as my phone would stop, it was ringing again. And so this is a tactic that they use, and it's every single time. And I'm telling you, there was too many for this to be just a normal. There can't be that many people with no life.
Right.
So it was just too much coming in at us. And it was, I mean, they're good at what they do. I'll give them that. They're good at what they do. My 2 sons, who are old enough to understand what's going on, 11 and 8, they were pretty scared. My oldest son at one point even asked me or told me that he wished I had never said it. And when he told me that, I sat him down, and my other boy too, and we talked about the fact that our freedom is not a gift given to us by our government, but a right given to us by God at birth. And we can't back down to people like this just because they're threatening to kill us, and running these smear stories and whatnot. So we broke down as a family and prayed. And in that moment, I'm telling you, I have never in my life been so sure of what God wanted me to do. It was very, I've never felt that way in my life. And
Right.
At that point, I knew I needed to not only stand up, but that I needed to stand up boldly. I needed to stand up proudly. And since then, I haven't looked back. We are small business owners, and they were, of course, attacking our business as well. I did have that concern that we would be affecting the livelihood of our team. And so we had a conversation with our team, and everyone on our team stood with me on this. And not everyone has the same beliefs that I do. Everyone stood with me on this. And so our company also took a very bold stance for what is going on in this country. And it's the same thing every time with the left. It's because that's all they have. Right. Their whole foundation is built on deceit, lies, hate. We stand on the side of truth. We stand with God. And as long as we keep standing up, their foundation is going to crumble every single time. And it has. I mean, in our personal life, I'm still receiving threats, but I don't care. And they've lessened quite a bit. These people back down every single time because they have no foundation.
Right.
And so that's my encouragement, I guess, to everyone is we cannot let them push us into submission. We have to stay awake. We have to stay active.
I've said over and over again to never apologize never apologize to the cancel culture, because it's never going to work out well for you. What we saw is what we see from the left every single time. It's their Will Smith reaction, right? Listen, it's a joke. It's a joke out of frustration. Don't get me wrong. Let's Go Brandon is rooted in frustration. It was gifted to us by the mainstream media, by that young lady at the NASCAR race, trying to cover up what the crowd was really chanting. It was an absolute meme goldmine handed to us on a platter. And when we use it, when people say it, now it has white supremacist connotation. Yeah. Now it's a racial thing. It isn't. It isn't. No. It's a funny way of venting frustrations, but this is how the left react to it. And they react to it because they cannot do this as well as people on the right. The way you handled this is the perfect way to respond to something like this. It's to not apologize. It's to stand your ground and to not give up. And when they realize they're not going to beat you into submission, they'll walk away, because it then becomes work. Then it's work.
Yeah.
It's a time investment. And
they don't like to work. We know that. So.
Right. That's right. So you're in Oregon. I don't want to give anybody your location or anything like that, but are you close to Portland? Are you familiar with what's been going on in Portland at all? Well, you're familiar with it, obviously, but have you been wrapped up in any of that by any chance? Because
No,
that would be
so
a
I'm
huge source of frustration for somebody.
Oh, it is, because the policies up there are rolling downhill, so to speak. And I'm in Southern Oregon. We've been in a bubble here, but that bubble is starting to swell. And so we are feeling the effects of the liberal policies of our governor, and our entire governmental system really in Oregon is very corrupt, as it is all across this country. And we've had mail-in ballots for as long as I can remember, so maybe that's a big part of it. But I will say, and Portland is a mess. So I was a police officer from 2012 to 2018, and I saw. You're kind of in it every single day, so I saw a big shift, a big change in our state in those 6 years, and. I've done training up in Portland. I was a drug recognition expert, and I've done training up there where they would actually bring people in from the streets, and we would run them through tests. For anyone listening that doesn't know what a drug recognition expert is, essentially, if you're arrested for DUI and it's not alcohol related, then a DRE is called in, and they run another series of tests and observations. And determine, they form an opinion as an expert as to what that person is impaired by, what's impairing them. A lot of the time in Oregon, it's marijuana, and heroin. There's a lot of heroin and meth, but marijuana is usually number one. But anyway,
and cocaine, a lot of coke too.
Yeah,
it's everywhere.
It is. I didn't run into that as often, but yeah, it's just working up there. The trackers is what we would refer to them as, but they were officers that were there to assist us. The trainees, they would go out and acquire people in the streets, and they would come back with a 15-passenger van full of people in 10 minutes, full. And these are people that are actively preparing to use or just used.
Right.
Because they wouldn't bring us, not everyone that came in was under the influence, because you want to be able to form an opinion. And sometimes people who are arrested for DUI aren't impaired by anything. Right.
Well, you have to be able, to test whether the drug recognition techniques work. A hammer looks like a hammer, right? At the end of the day. So you've got to make sure that false positives are kept to an absolute minimum, because we've had a number of them here in Marietta, Georgia. One officer in particular who has had case after case after case thrown at. Regardless, that's not the topic of this conversation. But yeah, you've got to bring in both positive and negative subjects.
Now you talk about the recognition piece, Jared. Alex, I don't know about you. Jared, you're a little younger. I don't know if you had a DARE program when you were in primary school. Okay. Alex, I don't think y'all had a DARE program on that little fly shit island you grew up on.
Listen, I'm from England, and I'm going to say apparently we didn't have a drug problem in England, because I was never, ever exposed to drugs as a kid or a teenager.
Well, and in fairness, one of the most disappointing things I found about adulthood is there are a lot fewer people out there offering me free samples of drugs than I was led to suspect based on my DARE education as a young man. But I was in primary school in the 80s, and we had the DARE program. The DARE officer came in. I think it was every other week the DARE officer would come and visit, and he would have like this display and it was just little baggies taped up on like a white project board, and this is cocaine, this is heroin, et cetera, this is meth, and there were tiny little samples, maybe one, maybe enough to get one person high of any given drug, but they were all evidence samples, and he would let us smell the pot, and there would always be somebody who asked, well, why can't we smell the cocaine?
Yeah, of course. So let me ask you.
Recognize that on the street too.
Let me ask you this, Jared, because listen, you can answer. You don't have to. What were your? I have an idea, but why? What led you to leave law enforcement? Now you're in Oregon. You are you're living and working through a time in society where the police are taking an absolute beating on all fronts. And I have to assume that played into it.
That didn't so much play into it for me because you build a sense of camaraderie that is really powerful. I mean, they feel like blood. I mean, brothers and sisters in blood. And so that never bothered me. I think it does bother some people for sure. But that never really bothered me. But the gradual political decline of our state definitely made the job much more frustrating, much more difficult to do your job well,
right.
To do your job safely. Safety is a huge thing. And frankly, I mean, our state just gives handouts and slaps on the wrist. And I mean, essentially right now, small amounts of hard drugs are legal. Right. You well, not legal. I shouldn't say legal, but you won't go to jail.
They're overlooked.
You'll get a ticket. Yeah, you will get a ticket, and if you don't show up for court, well, okay, then that's it, I guess.
Right, and if the only punishment for a crime is a fine, then it's only illegal if you're poor.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, because when are they going to pay that?
Right.
They're not. So, and they're not going to show up for court. So if warrants are issued, then they'll do a couple of hours in jail, maybe a night, and back on their way.
Yeah, it's got to be tough when you put in the hours and the dedication to do that job, literally putting your life on the line, only for prosecutors to turn around and say, "We're not prosecuting this." That's difficult.
And it is, and literally putting your life on the line, and yet you're scrutinized for every little thing that you do. So that does make the job difficult. And I would say the vast majority of police officers across this country do things the right way. We hear about the bad ones, it's but it's difficult when the rules are always changing too.
Mm-hmm.
And in Oregon, at least, they seem to change quite a bit. And so it's definitely difficult. I was actually looking at other agencies, nothing against the agency that I worked for, because it was fantastic and great friends that that are still there. But I was looking for something else because I was frustrated. And that's when my parents, who have owned this electrical company in Klamath Falls, Oregon, they extended a job offer to me. I prayed about it with my family and decided to make the jump into that because we felt that it would be better, not only for our family, but for my walk with God, and for my blood pressure.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
You don't realize you're stressed out when you're doing it. At least I didn't realize it. But yeah, I guess, probably about 6 weeks. It took about 6 weeks when I got, maybe even longer, actually, a couple of months for me to unwind.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely does take a toll on you in that way. But gosh, it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done, because there are people that you do help. And that's a pretty awesome experience when that does happen, even though it is few and far between. And just the camaraderie, it was fun. So I miss it, but absolutely the right choice to get out in my particular case.
Gotcha. Now you're working for the family business. Let me ask you about this. You alluded to it when we were talking about the media's reaction to this. Let's talk about social media and their reaction. Yeah. have you or your family's business received any pushback from the likes of Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, things like that? Any blatant censorship issues going on with you guys?
I was censored for doing a repost a week or so ago on Instagram.
Right.
And of someone else's post, which was not a false post. I looked it up to make sure after the fact, and it wasn't false. But otherwise, I mean, we've been attacked by people on social media, especially on Facebook. And Facebook did take me. I made a Facebook like right after this happened, and an Instagram right after this happened. And Facebook actually took me down within 24 hours for no reason. And I submitted it for review. And within 24 hours, I was back on. I hadn't even done a post on it yet. Yeah. So it was kind of weird.
That's interesting.
And yeah. And I mean, our business was attacked in terms of like hackers trying to hack our website and review bombing, people trying to get into our emails and whatnot. But as far as social media goes, there hasn't been anything
interesting,
anything noteworthy.
Okay, well, that's good, because we know what social media can be like, especially when it comes to certain ideologies. And this is where we're going to start talking about issues, because I'm curious to know what you think about the issues. And this is a tie-in that I think is particularly relevant. Chris,
can I butt in real quick before we take that quick change of topic? In response to a comment, because you were talking, Jared, about how your local government's very left and all that. Mike Terry had a comment up here, says, I had a discussion with my teenage son about not choosing law enforcement or going into the military while a Democrat is in office. And I want to address that real quick. Here's the thing, Mike, and the rest of you guys. I detest the idea of doing public service under the auspices of a Democrat. But the fact of the matter is this.
Let's make it clear real quick. Chris did serve. Chris is a veteran, so he is speaking from a position of personal experience here.
And when I enlisted, I was 25 years old, and we had an awful Democrat in office at the time named George W. Bush. And he was replaced by a much, much worse communist, Barack Obama. And guys, while I was in Afghanistan and Obama was the president, it was a miracle that because of my very special position, I had a unique set of rules of engagement that were somewhat different than the general military rules of engagement. But Obama's rules of engagement at the time said that if we took active fire from the enemy, and returning fire meant that we risked destroying fruit-bearing plants or crops of any kind, that we were absolutely forbidden to engage. Now, I was in a special position that involved some expensive equipment, and frankly, I was an extra expensive soldier because of the special training, and so we got some consideration for that. I got to return fire, and I got a lot of extra work downrange because units like to say, oh no, we've got the special guy with us, so we get to ignore your ROE and we can blow up that piece of shit pomegranate tree.
Yeah, we can shoot the pomegranates.
Or burn down that pot field that they're shooting mortar fire from, because that was a constant problem too. But Mike, the fact of the matter is, even if you've got the worst president in U.S. history, like, for example, maybe your teenage son wants to enlist today. Let's go, Brandon. The fact of the matter is that president will not always be the president. And across the course of a 20 or 30-year military career, you will have bad presidents and good presidents. Well, at a minimum, you'll have Republican and Democrat presidents. Well, at a minimum, you'll end up with somebody who says he's a Republican. But even if you say, hey, Donald Trump's the president right now, let's say 2-3 years ago you were making the choice to enlist, with Donald Trump in the White House, and a chance that he'd get reelected and you'd get to serve, 4, 5, 6, 8 years under the God Emperor, negotiating peace in the Middle East and drawing down forces in unnecessary foreign wars. Well, even after that 8 years, we're talking about a 20 to 30-year military career. There's a high degree of probability that not only are you guaranteed that that president will leave office during your career, you are absolutely not guaranteed that the follow-on administration will be close, as good, or the opposite. So making that choice on entering service as a career maneuver based on the current president is short-sighted and ill-advised. Even with former vice president and his spit roast VP, it's not a short-term decision that you're making.
There you go. Yeah. I say, listen, you trust your chain of command. You trust they're going to do the right thing. Whether that's a wise decision right now when we have what I consider a traitor as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, don't know. Don't know whether it's a wise move right now or not.
And in all fairness, 556 and 762 and active free commerce is more fun than a man ought to be allowed to have. I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss it. Gotcha.
Sabrina, that is Christopher Lowry of the Brushfire Mind. And Sabrina says, thank you for your service, Chris.
It was my pleasure. I had a blast. And Sabrina, if you've enjoyed my commentary, we'll be live tomorrow morning at 07:30 on the Brushfire Mind. And we'll be talking about Disney and Ron DeSantis. And now Brian Kemp. Brian's trying to get himself back in my good graces again, apparently.
All right. So
Heels up Harris.
Heels up, yeah.
From the chat.
So Jared, let's talk about some issues now. This is something we've talked about a number of times on here. What I consider the inextricable link between government and social media. People say, well, it's a private platform. They get to censor your speech, right? The First Amendment doesn't apply online. And I've argued many times that the government is social media, and we're experiencing an example of that right now as we speak. This week, the news has broken that Jen Psaki, the press secretary, is planning a move to MSNBC to run her own show. She is still currently the press secretary, and she was asked about this. Let me run a video real quick, and then we'll come back and talk about this.
And just because this has been raised by our colleagues, by people who are observing this process, is it ethical for you to continue conducting this job while negotiating with a media outlet?
Well, I have.
That's a valid question, right? And this, by the way, from a member of the mainstream Marxist media, which makes it even more surprising. Is it ethical for her to continue doing this job while actively working with MSNBC to get a job over there? And it raises a number of questions in my mind. Number one, I think it's obvious what her mission is going to be at MSNBC. Otherwise, this administration would have booted her the second they found out about it, because they wouldn't want her getting information. Well, they obviously don't care that she's getting information, because they have absolutely no doubt how it's going to be reported on MSNBC. And number two, is this an opportunity for her to just spread whatever misinformation she wants to in order to try and boost her public profile to help her land a job at MSNBC? Jared, what do you think about this move?
Well, I think I agree with both the two things you just said. Here's the deal. I mean, she hasn't been able to tell the truth or answer a question straight since she started that job.
Right.
And that's going to continue with MSNBC. MSNBC is not known for its honesty or for providing real news. This does prove that the government is very closely knit with our mainstream media.
Mm-hmm.
What was her response to his question?
We can play that. Let's go see.
And just because this has been raised by our colleagues with the media outlet.
Well, I have always gone over and above the stringent ethical and legal requirements of the Biden administration, and I take that very seriously. And as a standard for every employee of the White House, I have received rigorous ethics counseling, including as it relates to any future employment. I've complied with all ethics requirements and gone beyond and taken steps to recuse myself from decisions as appropriate. And so I hope that all of you, I've been working with all of you some time, would judge me for my record and how I treat all of you, both in the briefing room and otherwise. And I try to answer questions from everybody across the board. I know everybody in the back of the room may not always be pleased with me, but I try my best, and I will certainly continue to do that.
So that was her response. Listen, I got to tell you, I think she's a smart lady. She's an intelligent woman. She handles herself remarkably well at the podium, but boy, oh boy, does she lie for this administration.
Yes.
So it seems like the perfect transition to go from the press briefing room over to MSNBC to me, which is the mainstream media home of lies.
When you're getting ethics training from someone who has a laptop from hell and is doing business, money laundering in other countries, then you might want to recheck who's teaching you ethics.
One of the networks speculated today that they believe an indictment is coming, and that's why she's bailing now, it's rumored that she'll be leaving in May.
Very well could be.
Could very well be, right?
So, yeah.
Which leads us, I guess, somewhat handily into this.
Yes.
So Twitter have been one of the main offenders of stifling speech, stifling people's ability to express themselves in what is now the modern day public square. And they've been able to operate with impunity up until now. News broke today that Elon Musk is now the largest shareholder of Twitter. We know what Elon is like. Elon, well, I'm making some assumptions about what Elon is like based on interviews I've seen him do, and he appears to be somewhat of a free speech absolutist. It's the appearance I get of him. Do we think, Chris, Jared, do we think for 1 second, though, this is going to make any difference to the way that Twitter operates?
I think it might. And here's the thing. So you look at Elon Musk, go back to the beginning of PayPal and how PayPal has developed over time. And we've seen PayPal since Elon's left it has gone so far as to ban and censor people and has gotten in on all of the cancel culture crap.
Right.
Just like in any number of the other big payment processors. But then you get to Elon, quite separately from PayPal, now that he's not associated with it anymore. He moved Tesla from California to Texas over regulations and taxes. It wasn't just a smart move. It wasn't even all that smart a move. It was the obvious move. It was the no-brainer move. Very, very few serious large companies are continuing to remain in California for a reason. And it's not just it's not just the high taxes. They're steeped in an absolute psychopathy that's resulted in, dirty needles and human feces all over the sidewalk. And I mean, seriously, you're going to charge me, quadruple the national average in state income and sales taxes. I'm going to pay exorbitant taxes for public services, and the result is my public services are literally covered in shit. Sorry, not the right answer. And so he's absolutely been a bit of a free speech absolutist and an absolute epic troll on Twitter.
That's true.
I mean, he took to Twitter to challenge Vladimir Putin to a mano fight to the death for the rights to Ukraine. I was hoping the Kremlin would respond. I mean, obviously, we don't live in a good enough world that the fight's going to happen. But good God, I'd watch that one. But the fact that as a majority shareholder, Elon can just walk in the building and say, "Hey, I want to talk to the CEO," and that's not a request that he's making as far as any gatekeeper between he and the CEO are concerned. If Elon walks in and says, "I want to talk to the CEO," no, that's it. He's going to drop what he's doing and he's going to meet with the majority shareholder. You don't just say, "I'm busy," when your majority shareholder walks in. When you're talking about a majority shareholder, it's what is it? He has 9.2%.
9.2%. Yep.
Yeah.
But that's the highest individual shareholder.
Largest individual shareholder. Yep.
Right. So when you talk about a majority shareholder, you're not talking about 51%. There are very few places where that happens in publicly traded companies. But at the same time, understand that when you're talking about 9.2% of Twitter, you're talking about $2.5 to $3 I almost said trillion $1 billion investment, and it
3.2 billion. I think it cost him.
Elon bought it a couple. Oh, right. He's had a profit over the last 2.5 weeks since he bought it of like $2 billion. That's a tiny little sum.
The man can move markets. I'll tell you that.
For a half for a half-month maneuver, I ain't hating. Jealous, sure, but
do we think though he's setting himself up to buy more of a stake? Do we think he's eyeing an actual takeover of Twitter? Because then he would be able to change things.
Here's why I think that's a reasonable speculation. A couple of weeks ago, just before he made this maneuver, he was floating the idea of opening a competitor to Twitter.
Right.
So taking the majority stake, he could either be planning on just taking over Twitter instead of expending the resources to build a competitor. Because let's be real, even once you spend the money to build a Twitter, right? Twitter, it seems like a simple thing, but you've got massive server farms to operate that because you've got millions of tweets per minute in occurrence. That's a lot of data processing. That's a lot of communication and logistics processing. That's a very expensive thing to create. And Elon's definitely in a position where he could do that. However, if he could overtake Twitter, that would be significantly easier. And completely distinct from all of the technological and logistical challenges of trying to build something to compete with Twitter, there's the fact of the competition. You would be entering a market which is already, it's not a saturated market. Twitter is sufficiently different from things like Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. The major individual social media platforms that you think about off the top of your head, they are distinctly different enough from one another that they almost represent entirely different markets. Even though they all share the same client base, it's like, I buy ice cream, I buy cheese, and I buy milk for my cereal. But that doesn't mean that I'm the same target audience for each of those purchases.
Yeah, I mean, right. the only it's not even a competitor at this point, but the only thing remotely similar would be Truth Social right now. I don't know if y'all are on. Jared, you on Truth Social yet?
I am, yeah. And cool. I would say I could see it becoming a competitor. It does need some work.
Yeah.
Primarily with how the feed works. That's the one thing I don't like about it. When you respond to someone, that is now the first thing on your feed when people are logged in and they don't even know what you're talking about unless they go through that whole chat. And so that's something I would like to see change. But the fact that you're able to speak freely is huge. And
precisely. And if that's Elon's goal here, then he'll then be in competition with President Trump. because
Yeah,
Truth
he will.
Truth Social is President Trump's
long as he-
platform. It's going to grow. They're going to work out the bugs. I mean, we all remember Twitter back. I got my 15-year anniversary notice of being in that cesspool of Twitter last week, and we all remember how it was back then. But it's grown. It's grown. It's become remarkably successful. Love it or hate it, it is the modern day public town square. And as much as I don't like being on Twitter these days, you have to be to keep an eye on what's going on. And I hope that Truth Social gets there, but I also don't want to exist in an echo chamber. I don't want one platform to simply be people that agree with me or people that I agree with. I want to see what, for lack of a better term, I want to see what the enemy is doing and be able to keep a close eye on them. So whatever Elon's intentions here, I don't want to see major changes, but I would like to see some transparency for sure.
I'd like to see him bring Trump back too.
Yes. Yeah, and 9.2% is that going to be enough oomph, Chris, do you think, to get President Trump brought back onto Twitter? I just don't think it will be.
I don't think so. No. I'd like to think it. I'd like to think it, but
now you get up to 49%, then we're talking.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yes.
So again, I have to wonder what's his long-term goal. He could buy Twitter outright. He could buy all $32 billion worth of stock and still be the world's richest man. So it's not, listen, that would hurt, obviously, especially if you're buying it just to prove a point or just out of principle. That would be a huge step to take. But
it wouldn't hurt that much, honestly, because when you're playing at that level and you're buying stock in that amount, it's not like buying a cheeseburger where you're spending money and the money's gone. It's not even like buying a stock at kind of the middle American income level where you're investing in the future. When you're talking about stock in billions of dollars in company controlling shares, you're not spending money. You're hardly even investing it. It's more like storing it.
right.
Yeah.
It's almost like just taking it out of one bank and putting it in another one.
Sure. I mean, it's an investment for sure, but it's a mighty expensive and potentially mighty painful one, because listen, we've all seen how the left respond to things. Jared, you've experienced it firsthand.
Well, it's kind of like Jeremy Boring started his razor company, and he said, this started as a joke. I tend to tell expensive jokes, and that's kind of how this went. And then Elon Musk said, hold my beer.
And I just have to wonder, I have to wonder what the reaction would be to Elon actually taking over Twitter. And I would personally expect a mass exodus of people, celebrities, all these blue check marks now saying #delete Twitter just to simply try and punish him, because that's their MO. This is what they do. This is what the cancel culture thrives on. Now, Elon will put two big old middle fingers up to them and roll with the punch, but that's exactly what I would expect.
See, that's not going to happen because when you're talking about Twitter, where are they going to go?
Truth Social.
Exactly. Yeah. See, and that's why you're blue checks. That's why you're champagne socialists and caviar communists. Your limousine liberals, and I can go on for a while with that, but they're not going anywhere because they don't have anywhere. The only places they have to go, I mean, they're already on Instagram, but they're not having political conversations on Instagram because that's all about photo sharing, brand building, and video processing. Mm-hmm. But Steve asked the question, do you think Tesla sales will drop? No, absolutely not. You're talking about the same people that said if Donald Trump gets elected in 2016, I'm moving to Canada.
Yeah.
Which, name me one.
Right. You're absolutely right. Let's Listen, let's tempt the fate of the YouTube gods. Let's talk about 2020 real quick. I want Jared's opinion on this. Let's focus in on this little gem though, because this is in the news right now. The media cover up of Hunter Biden's laptop story. We know that. So being careful with what I say, YouTube. We know that
we
in
will be
6,
live on Rumble tomorrow morning.
Yeah, we know that. Right. We know that 1 in 6 Biden voters said they would not have voted for Joe Biden had they known about this story. Jared, you were in law enforcement. You know about cover-ups, and this was a conspiracy, in my opinion, an absolute media and social media cover-up of this story. Twitter took the lead of it by banning the New York Post and banning the story for a couple of weeks.
Well, that right there is a big red flag, is what are you trying to hide at that point? If
Right.
it's not a real story, then let's look at it and dissect it. A lot like what happened in November 2020. Instead of covering things up, why don't we open the whole package and see what happened?
Mhm.
So that was the first red flag right there, especially since the New York Post is they have a fairly good reputation. It was just blatantly obvious. It was blatantly obvious what was going on. It was blatantly obvious that it was real. I don't know. These 1 in 6 must really be in a bubble. That's all I got to say, because and you said 1 in 6 said they won't vote. They wouldn't have voted for him.
Yeah, 1 in
Correct.
6. 1 in 6 Biden
It's
voters
amazing to
that
me
were
that
polled.
5 would have. I can't
Yes.
believe 5 still would have.
Yeah, but it shows how successful they were in actively covering up this story. We have to remember, right? The three of us here, we read the news. We go out of our way to keep up with current events. So many people don't. And we forget that, right? We forget that there are people out there who are just living their lives, going through the day-to-day, going to work, coming home, watching whatever's on TV, Game of Thrones, or whatever it is that people watch these days. And they're not watching the news. They've tuned it out because they're sick of it. And so they have no knowledge of this story whatsoever.
And just no self ability to critically think, because it's every single time they attack and cover things up. They attacked me because of what Joe Biden said, not because of what I said. Joe just showed the world that he's clueless, like he does every single day, and that's why they were mad about it. And it's the same sort of a thing with the laptop. As soon as they try to cover something up, that's when our antennas should be up and we should be paying attention.
Absolutely. And it ties in with your story and your treatment as well, because we're left without you being able to come on to shows like this, without you being able to go on with Benny and to go on to Fox News, we wouldn't know who Jared Schmeck is. We wouldn't know what you actually believe. We would have this portrait painted for us by a left-wing media with an ideological bias who were just out to get you. And that's what we would have been left believing. And that's what we were left with this laptop story. The media saying, no, it's fake. It's Russia yet again. We were left to believe every bit of that. Now, the truth, inevitably, the truth will always come out. Indictments are coming, whether people want to admit it or not. Indictments are coming. The story here isn't Hunter Biden. The story here is Joe Biden. The story is Joe Biden's involvement in this, which will guaranteed result in his impeachment.
That was so that's, tell me what you guys think of this, but why now? Why are they could keep covering this up if they wanted to. So why are they now unveiling the curtain?
So
because they're done with him?
that's not terribly difficult. And it has to do with the same reason that Psaki's going to MSNBC. This is actually what we did our show on this morning. What Psaki's job is going to be when she gets over to MSNBC is her job is going to be to malign Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, because what the Dems are starting to realize right now is that they are facing, if there is a free and fair election come the midterms this year, which I'm assuming there will be.
Yeah. Oh yeah, safest.
right.
It's going to be the safest and most secure set of primary
Perfectly
elections
fortified.
in history.
Completely flaccid amphibians.
Yes.
There will be no frog erections, no amphibious priapisms. I'm certain of it. But let's assume that it's a completely free and fair election coming up this year for the midterms, and that will be an absolute massacre for the left. Their only options, they're in full spin and damage control. Psaki has had to walk back multiple times just in the last few days. Joe saying, we're going to invade Ukraine.
Yep.
We're going to fire nuclear weapons at the Kremlin, and we are looking for regime change to get rid of Putin. He said all those things. Then he said it never happened and doubled down and said it again in the same speech where he said he never said it. And Psaki has had to run cover for all of that. And it's not just her getting frustrated. The DNC understands that they are walking into an absolute massacre in November. And so they are getting ready to shift the blame. They're going to throw Joe and Kamala under the bus. Joe will not run again in 2024. Kamala will never be allowed to run again. She will not be allowed to run for president, for vice president, or even, I don't think Kamala will be allowed by her party to run for any other elected position forever. She's become such a black mark because of her just uselessness. Like, unlike Joe, Kamala hasn't had any really public actual failures where she's caused actual harm. Instead, she's had a series of public just inadequacies, right? But
that's probably the worst insult anyone has ever given to Kamala Harris.
But basically, she is not adequately valuable in the position to have made mistakes. Mm-hmm. She's that useless and incompetent. And everybody knows it. And everybody that voted for the pair of them at a minimum regrets voting for her. And just like this Ketanji Brown, let's not forget literally the only reason, and we do not have to take this from speculation because Joe said it on the campaign trail. Literally the only reason she is his vice president is because she was the right color and plumbed the right way. So Psaki's going over to MSNBC. She's going to run cover for the DNC. And instead of trying to circle back and backtrack and run cover for Joe's flubs, her job is going to be to ease the Democrats into accepting a 25th Amendment removal, maybe, at a bare minimum, into accepting that Joe doesn't run again in 2024. But optimistically, she's going to walk the Democrats into being prepared to accept Republicans after they take the House and Senate going through with an impeachment, where unlike the impeachments against Donald Trump, we have actual high crimes and misdemeanors committed by Joe Biden that we can point at with evidence.
Yeah.
That evidence thing is tricky, right?
Yeah. And involving the very same thing.
Not just that it's creepy when Joe whispers into the microphone.
Yeah, and it's ironically involving the very same thing that one of the things President Trump was impeached for, which is dealings with Ukraine.
Correct.
Yeah.
Only this time, actual crimes appear to have taken place. Listen, Chris, it's going. Here's the thing:
Alex,
it's going to get.
I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but because you mentioned that, let me just back up real quick and remind everybody: when President Trump was impeached over the Ukrainian conversation, let's not forget that was the DNC, right, running an impeachment where they made it very clear impeachment is a political maneuver. It is not a legal standard. Right? It's supposed to be a legal standard according to the Constitution, but practically that is no longer the case. And when Trump was impeached over the conversation with the Ukraine, it was done by Democrats exclusively. Yes, I'm counting Mitt Romney, that shitburger.
Yeah, I was going to say. Plus Mitt.
Yeah. Mitt fits him like a glove, doesn't he?
He does.
Like
He does.
A mitt, one might say. But what happened there is Donald Trump asked the questions. What's going on with Joe and Hunter and Burisma and the Ukraine? We had Joe and Hunter dead to rights, hands in the cookie jar, committing active crimes in the UK while Joe was the vice president. And even before Joe Biden, remember this, don't forget, Trump started asking the questions before Joe Biden had entered the race. Joe had said he wasn't going to run because of health concerns. And Trump just asked casually the question, what's going on with the Bidens and the Ukraine? And all of a sudden, it was, oh, no.
Well, here, let's watch this real quick.
Biden's secret emails.
A really fishy story.
The Post claimed that the emails were found on a laptop computer that was brought to a repair shop in Delaware in the spring of 2019.
The FBI is now investigating whether those alleged Hunter Biden emails are actually connected to a larger foreign intelligence operation.
They may be related to a foreign intelligence operation.
Foreign intelligence operation.
Foreign intelligence.
Foreign intelligence.
Foreign intelligence operation.
For all we know, these emails are made up.
The information found on the laptop may be part of a Russian disinformation campaign.
Part of a Russian disinformation effort.
Described by many intelligence experts as having hallmarks.
All the hallmarks of a Russian
disinformation.
Russian disinformation.
Disinformation campaign.
This is a classic example of the right-wing media machine.
This is now Jen Psaki's job. This will be this will be her one function after moving to MSNBC. It's a coordinated listen, we get attacked for misinformation all the time. This is a coordinated mainstream media misinformation campaign to try and protect Joe Biden. And the question, Jared's question, is why now? It's a very appropriate question. Why now? I think we'll find out soon.
And I think we know why. It's just that's the question everyone needs to be asking.
The Democrats
everyone
know
should be
they're in
asking
trouble.
that.
The Democrats know they're in trouble, so they're going to try to get rid of Joe. He's got to go.
Yeah.
We're coming up to where we've actually gone over, Jared, and I appreciate you staying on longer than the hour.
Oh, yeah.
Let me ask you this: what's the future for Jared Schmeck now? Where I mean, obviously you're a working man of faith, family man, but you're also in the zeitgeist now. You're part of this.
God has taken me places I never thought I would go. I spoke at a Kerry Lake rally earlier in March, spoke at Patriot Fest in Naples, Florida. Over the weekend, I had the opportunity to speak here in Oregon, in Salem. The Reawaken America tour came to Oregon, and man, the reception was insane. Right. I wasn't even a planned speaker. They pulled me up there and just getting involved and trying to encourage people to stand up, people my age, and men in general and Christians in general need to be more bold because our country's gotten so far away from God. And that's really what this comes down to. You go far enough, turn your back on God, then everything else is going to degrade as a result of that. And it's been happening for years, and I'm sick and tired of it. And a lot of people are. So God's given me this opportunity, and I will go wherever he leads me in this. I'm working on a podcast right now. It's not off the ground yet. We'll just see where he leads me.
Good. I was going to ask you if you had any plans for a podcast. I'll be a subscriber 100%. And I look forward. I'm very much looking forward to you being up there on stage with President Trump in 2023, 2024 when he's running for, which I think we all believe is going to happen, when he's running for president again. I know you're going to be invited. It's guaranteed that you're going to be there. I'm very much looking forward to it. Listen, I'm going to ask you to stay around and stay in the green room for us. But I want to thank you. I want to thank you sincerely for taking time out of your day and away from your family today to come here and be with us and to talk. It's been an absolute pleasure. I wish you and your family absolutely nothing but the best. And I'm looking forward to that podcast, brother. I really am. It's hard work, but it's worth it.
Yeah, and I appreciate people like you giving people like me a voice. So thank you very much, and God bless you guys.
Anytime. And listen, anytime you want to come back, just send me an email. Let me know. Okay. We'll have you on. We'll talk about absolutely anything. Now that we've got to know Jared, we've heard your story. Now we can beat up on Biden together. If you want to join us, Chris, thank you, brother. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, baby. Anytime.
And again, you can find Chris over there at the Brushfire Mind. There is a link in the description. And by the way, if you're watching from the BFM, go to the TPS report and give us a like or a subscribe as well. We love doing stuff like this, and it's the audience that makes it worth it. Fellas, let's say goodnight.
Hey,
yeah, go on.
Real quick, Alex, before you cut off, do me a favor and bring up the chat on the screen one more time. Everybody's saying thank you and great show and all that. Lots of love for you, Jared.
Thank you.
Our audience is absolutely thrilled and excited to see you there.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
They absolutely are. And much love to the audience as well for the support they're showing. Luckily, yes. and luckily, no trolls this evening, unless our banhammers were just remarkably quick and I didn't even see them. Let's go, Brandon.
I didn't see any trolls pop up, and all things considered, I mean, for me to be on your show, for my show to be paired with your show tonight, that we didn't get a troll tonight.
A single troll, that's right.
Now that we've got Jared on here, a miracle.
That's right.
You must have prayed hard before you called in there, brother.
That's right. All right, guys, we're gonna let you guys go. Jared, if you would just stick around for a minute till I end the show, and then I'll say goodbye off camera. Chris, you too, stick around, brother. Everybody, thanks so much. Danielle will be back on. Danny will be back on Thursday. We'll be back to the typical format of Danielle carrying the show. Because that's what that's why you show up to see Danny. I know this. We love you. I'll do Danielle's line. We love you. We appreciate you, and we'll see you on Thursday. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.